Welcome to Chandu's TechNet. In this video, I will show you how to troubleshoot database mirroring configuration failure, right? How to fix the issue. Recently, one of my friend asked me, like they are trying to configure database mirroring on their local machine, or so they are trying to configure database mirroring, and it is failing with this error, right? 1418. Let's understand how to understand where the issue is and how to troubleshoot and fix that issue. Right, before we jump into the demo, let me give you a high level overview. What is database mirroring? Database mirroring is a high availability and disaster recovery solutions that we have in SQL Server. Right, if you see here, we have two servers. Right, we call one as principal, the other one we call it as a mirror, or primary or secondary. Right, whenever there is a failure happen on primary, right, the automatic failover would trigger and the secondary database will become primary. This automatic failover supports only if you have a the other server called witness server, right? So if you have a witness, then with the help of witness, whenever there is a failure of one server, the automatic failover happens. Whenever there is a failure on primary, with the help of witness, the automatic failure happens and the current secondary will become primary, right? That's it. That is the high level overview of database mirroring, right? To have this feature, we will have to configure database mirroring. Let me show you how to configure what are all, so the options that we have to configure database mirroring. Before we, configure, so what are the prerequisites? We should have to have a so the database with a full recovery model. The recovery model of the database should be full recovery. So I'm using this database, AdventureWorks LT 2014 option, and I have a full recovery model because the data is replicated. The data has to be replicated on the secondary server, right? So in other terms, like it will be a log blocks where it replicates to the secondary server, and the database should be restored on the secondary with no recovery. That is what I have done. So if the database is online, you would not be able to, if the database is online on secondary, you would not be able to configure database mirroring. So you will have to have a restored database on the secondary with no recovery, right? Just to save our time, I have restored the database. I have backed up the database on primary and restored on the secondary with no recovery. And to avoid any LSN mismatch, I have taken one log backup and restored on the secondary with no recovery as well, right? Test 2014 is a primary. SQL Focus 2014 is the secondary in our test scenario, right? And this is a single machine or local computer where I have installed two SQL instances with 2014, right? This is a work group computer, whereas it is not added to any domains, right? Since it is not added to the domain, I don't have any Active Directory service accounts. So let's understand the SQL service is running under which account. How to identify the service running under which account? So you have different options where you can go to services.msc or configuration manager. The same way you can check from the DMVs as well, right? Select start from sys.dm underscore server services, where you get the service account which SQL services are running, right? You have three whatever features services. I mainly concentrated on these two, right? Local system. My SQL is running under local machine, local system. This is on principal, primary. Let's check on the secondary as well. Cool. The secondary, the same thing. The system is the services are running under local system account, right? Cool. Now let's go ahead and configure database mirroring. This is not a domain account. Again, I'm telling this is not a domain added server. So I'm using the local system accounts to run my SQL Server services because I don't have any domain account to run on the domain services, or I would say like service accounts to run my SQL Server services. Let's go ahead and configure this database as a database part of database mirroring. You can go to the properties, whereas you have this option mirror, right? This is a principal server, right? You'll just have to configure next, and it is asking whether you have a witness or not. If you have a witness, it supports automatic failover. This is just to show you, so the configuration failure, I am selecting no, so I don't have a witness server. So the automatic failover would not be supported if there is no witness. I'm okay with that. It is asking whether you have a mirroring endpoint created or not, right? So when is this configuration, the data flow between primary to secondary will be happened through a database mirroring endpoint, right? We call it as a endpoint, mirroring endpoint, right? So if you'll have to configure endpoint here and endpoint here. The communication happens. This server will connect to the endpoint, and this server will connect to the endpoint and share the data between these two servers. The communication channel. So endpoint, we call it as a communication channel. So endpoint should be required to have a database mirroring. Even so always on availability group, we should have to have a database mirroring endpoint. Now I do have database mirroring endpoint already created. Where you can check that, go to server objects. You have mirroring endpoint. Let's remove this endpoint. Right, I just remove this endpoint just to make sure that, so how this works if you don't have endpoint, right? Right, so I just remove the endpoint, and let's see the database state is in recovery on the primary. This is there. Now let's close this. Go to this property of the database, which is going to configure database mirroring. If you click on mirroring, you don't see this details, right? Earlier we see principal name and all, right? Let's go ahead and configure security next, and it is the same screen. I don't have a witness. I'll go ahead and click next. See here, it is creating database mirroring. So the name can be given, this name can be anything, endpoint, right? You can give any name here, right? I'll just leave that as it is. You can rename anything, endpoint, database mirroring endpoint, whatever it is, right? If the mirroring is not exist, if the mirroring endpoint is not exist, this wizard will go ahead and create the mirroring endpoint for us, right? See here, if the principal, mirror, or witness are instances on the same server. So if you have on the same server, then you should have to have a different endpoint port numbers, right? Since this is a local machine where I have installed two instances on the same computer, I will have to specify two different port number. Otherwise, one port cannot be shared between multiple process. Just go ahead and next, and it is asking which one acting as a mirror server. I will be selecting this and connect, and it take us through this screen, whereas earlier 5022, now it is 5023. Next, and it is asking to provide the service accounts here, right? For SQL Server under like if SQL Server accounts in the same domain or trusted domain, specify the service accounts below, right? As I told you, this is a work group where it doesn't have a domain accounts domain accounts. It is not added to the domain. So this is not a trusted domain, and where I don't have a domain accounts to be specified here, right? If the accounts are non-domain, right? It is not in domain account, or the accounts are in untrusted domain, leave the text box empty. So what it is telling that if it is a domain accounts and those SQL service is running under those accounts, then you'll have to specify here, right? Principal, what service account it is running, mirror, what service account it is running. So we know that principal and mirror is running under the local account. It is not a domain account. So we no need to specify anything. You can leave this as blank. What if you specify this principal and mirror domain accounts? Then it will be creating these logins will be created on principal and mirror server, and it will grant the connect permission on the endpoint, right? The connect permission, because this has to connect this server and this has to connect this server to share the data, right? What is the communication channel? Endpoint. So primary should have a connect permission on the endpoint of secondary. Secondary should have a connect permission of endpoint on the primary, right? Vice versa, so that you should be able to establish a connection and share the data across the servers, between the servers, right? I will leave this as blank because this is not a trusted domain accounts. Cool. And this will create an endpoint. See here, configure endpoint on principal server, configure endpoint on mirror server. If you expand this, see here, it is created with endpoint name, database mirroring, it is created, right? Cool. Now let's go ahead and start the database mirroring. It is just giving the information, what is the principal network address, mirror network address, right? So what it is telling that these properties are not a fully qualified domain name, right? The network address that we specify in the TCP connection is not a FQDN. Since it is not a domain machine, it doesn't have a FQDN details, right? So it is just a local machine. It doesn't have a FQDN of the so network name, right? This is just a local machine, right? FQDN is nothing but a fully qualified domain name. If you are a domain added server, then you will have this domain account. So like this, for example, if you see here, this is your mission name, this is your domain, this is your port number, right? Likewise, I don't have any. Okay, I'm okay, so this is fine. I'll just click OK to yes to start the database mirroring. Let's see what happens. Right. So we got the same error that is there in the so PPT, right? Like 1418 error. 1418, what it says, the server network address cannot be reached or does not exist. It says that it is not reached or doesn't exist, right? So we got some other details, like check the network address name, right? The name as in like TechNet, and that the ports for the local and remote endpoints are operational. Since it is only the same server, I don't have a concept of remote endpoints, right? This is on the same server. Now, what further we need to understand, let's try to configure a database mirroring through T-SQL. There could be bug or there could be some issue with the GUI, right? GUI. So let's understand if you are able to configure database mirroring through T-SQL. Okay. Let's go ahead and see DB mirroring. So I have this, so configuration. Let's see if you're able to configure on the so if you're able to configure using the T-SQL script, right? Here, the database name is Adventure Works. Good. The vice versa, right? Like for example, let's see. Okay. Fine. For example, this is your principal or primary. This is your secondary, right? So you will have to, secondary is a partner to this, primary is a partner to secondary, right? So this is a partner between each others, right? So these are the partners. Primary, secondary is partner to primary, primary is partner to secondary server. So what you'll have to do, you will have to execute this command on the secondary. This is what TechNet 5022. 5022 is the port number for primary server where you will be creating as a partner, setting as a partner. So let's go ahead and execute this and see. Is already enabled for database mirroring. It says the database is already enabled for database mirroring. Let's refresh, and it is in middle of recovery because it is trying to establish a connection and it is failing. So let's do remove database from the database mirroring. Right? How to do that? Alter database name set partner off. Right? So if you execute this, then the database will be removed from the mirroring. Refresh, it is in restoring state. Right? So you can execute the same thing on primary, but I think it should be already deleted, right? Not configured for database mirroring. That is fine. Cool. Now let's go ahead and execute this on the servers, right? This is on secondary I'm executing, and this is for primary. So I'm just executing this on secondary. Secondary is added. If you refresh, it will be in recovery. Now let's go ahead and execute on the primary. Copy, new query, and execute. This 5023 is for mirror server. Let's see what exactly is going on. It is executing, so it is taking time, so it definitely fails, right? See here, the server network name, network address cannot be reached or does not have the same error as we see from the through GUI, right? GUI, we see the same error, right? It says that address name. There could be possible, like it might be an issue with this network name, right? It is expecting FQDN, whereas we are providing this, so local server name, right? It might be an issue. I'm not telling that it is an issue with this name, but just to isolate the issue, let's try with the IP address that is, so IP address of the machine. Right, again, just remove this database from the mirroring. What is the IP address? Ping -a, this one. Okay, since it is a local mission, it resolves with the IPv6 address. But what I need, IPv4, right? How to get that? -4 to get the IPv4 address. Copy. Right, so this is, let's execute this on the, okay, this is on primary. It should be on the primary. Same thing, it should be on secondary, should be 5022. Let's execute this. Secondary, it is executing fine. Let's execute this on the primary same. 5023 is a mirror server port number, endpoint port number, where we are executing this command on principal. Because we are setting the partner of mirror to the principal, right? It gives the same error, right? Server network. So definitely it is not an issue with the network name or IP address or something, right? Let's understand if the issue is with the port. There are chances the port might be blocked. It might not be a remote port number, but the local mission, the ports might be blocked. But let's understand how to check whether the port is blocked or not. You will have to go through, you will have to test or telnet this port number and see telnet. So what is the command for telnet? What is the way that you can test whether the port is open or not? You will have to use the telnet. If it is not installed, you will have to install the telnet. It is a default. I mean, it is a, like I would say, like so inbuilt feature where you will just have to enable that, right? And technet, this is your computer name or server name, whatever we consider as, and space port number, that is 5022, right? If you see that a blank screen without any result, I mean, if you see the blank screen, it says that port is already listening, right? Right. Now, if you see the same thing, if port is not listen, or if the port is not open, or if the port is not configured, you will see something like this, right? Connect to telnet and the port is failed. Right? Connection failed. It is failed to connect. So now first we tested 5022. Now let's go ahead and test with 5023. Right? This is resolved. The issue is not with the port number as well. Let's understand where else we can check and troubleshoot the issue. Right? What we have done so far, we tried to configure database mirroring from GUI. It is failing with 1418 error. Whereas we tried with T-SQL query and it is failing with the same error. And we tested with the IP address. It is failed with the same error, right? Configure database mirroring with the IP address. It is failed with the same error. Then we tried, then troubleshooting part, we tested the ports are enabled or not, right? We tested successfully ports are listening or ports are not blocked. I would say other way, right? So these four are common in any troubleshooting, right? So whatever it is, either it is the same server or different server, or you have domain account, whatever it is, the troubleshooting will be same. Now let's understand the failure. Let's go to the error log and see what exactly you see in the SQL error log, right? Again, like SQL error log, you have different ways to read. I use sp_read error log, right? I convert this, I am using this output as a text format. This is a grid, this is text. See what so error you get. You can filter with this 0,1, for database, right? Let's see if we get anything for this database. Starting up database mirroring has been terminated for the database. See, 703, sorry. Database mirroring has been terminated for the database. This is an information message only. So it says that it is an information message only, but let's see. I'm just filtering with this mirroring. Right, you have different filters you can use. 0 is for the current error log, 1 is for the SQL error log. If you specify 2, it will be a SQL agent log, 1 is for SQL error log, and you can specify any filter here. Text something you can specify, you will get the so whatever filter you use, you will get that messages. So I will get all the lines which has this mirroring string, right? If you see here, has been disabled, stop database mirroring connection error, an error occurred while receiving a data, something, right? Connection was forcefully closed by the host, right? It says that the connection is closed by the host. Which host? 5023 on primary. So I don't have much. Like it says that the secondary is forcefully closed the connection. Let's understand why. Let's connect to the secondary server. That is SQL_focus 2014. Let's read the SQL error log again. Error log 0,1, like that. I'll convert this into text, execute. What it says, like it is trying to, let's take the recent one, right? It says that starting up database, the database is marked as restoring, that's okay. And it says the database mirroring login attempt by the login by the user failed with the error connection handshake failed. The login doesn't have a connect permission on the endpoint. So what it is telling, this login, since it is a work group, it says that this login doesn't have a connect permission on the endpoint. I told you, right, initially, whenever you specify that domain accounts while configuring database mirroring, it creates those logins and grant the connect endpoint permission, right? If it is a domain account, since we left it blank, it is not, so going to create any account. Now, which account it will create? It says that this is your account. It doesn't have a permission. Work group is nothing but your work group. It is not a active. It is not a domain. It is a work group. TechNet is your local mission, whereas dollar, it is your local system account, I would say, right? Can I go ahead and create this login? Or first, let's see whether this login exists or not. Security. Security. See here, does this login workgroup / technet dollar doesn't even exist, right? Are we able to create this login? Let's see. Create login from Windows. It says that Windows NT account does not exist or not found, right? You would not be able to create this account. So what you will have to do, if this is a local system account, right? So if SQL service is running under local system account, this local system will be bind to an account called NT authority / system account, right? This local account will be bind to this account and grant the connect permission, right? I mean, with this account, the connection between the servers would be happen, right? What I mean, this is your principal, this is your mirror. Mirror server, and you are using local account as a service account, service running on local account, service running on local account, right? If it is a domain account, if the service is running on domain account, if services are running on the domain account, sorry, domain account, then okay, so if the services are running under domain account, those will be created, those accounts login will be created if those are not exist, and grant the connect permission. So what does it mean? If it is a domain account, let's say domain account, domain XYZ / ABC, right? Here you have that XYZ / ABC. If this account doesn't exist, then this will create this account. This login will be created here. Login will be created here, and the login will be created here, and it grants the connect endpoint. Grant connect permission on endpoint. Since it is a local system account, right? So it will not create any login, right? Which login it has to create. So the reason you will have account called NT authority / system account. It bind to this NT authority / system account, and it uses the NT authority / system account to connect between the servers, right? So what I mean, this NT authority / system account should have a endpoint permission on the servers wherever it is running under the local account, right? Let's see. Now let's go ahead and grant connect permission on the endpoint, right? This is the syntax, grant connect on endpoint. So the endpoint name, I am using endpoint name as mirroring to NT authority / system. Go ahead and execute. We have granted, copy, This is on focus. The same thing on the other node as well, right? So we have granted connect permission on the endpoint. Now let's go ahead and initiate database mirroring. Start database mirroring, right? You should be able to, from here you can just click here. Let's see if it takes or not, right? See here, synchronized, the database are fully synchronized, right? As soon as I have granted the connect permission on the NT authority slash system account, then I am able to configure database mirroring successfully, right? We don't have a witness, so the reason it is, so setting the property to high safety without automatic failover. If you configure witness, you can configure to high performance. Suppose if you select this and if you try to click OK, it 1 second, like, so high performance. Okay, it is not a sync. Like if you see here, this is grayed out. It is not letting you to enable this feature because it requires witness server instance. It requires a witness server to have an automatic failover supported, right? So so high level overview what we have done. So the issue is we are trying to configure database mirroring on the same computer, but the troubleshooting whatever we have done is same, even if it is a domain account or if it is a servers added to the domain or a different servers we have. But the configuration that we have on the local computer, we have two instances with 2014 and trying to configure database mirroring between the servers using the local system account, right? And it is failing with 1418, and we have tested configuring database mirroring through GUI. We were unable to proceed, and we tested with the T-SQL queries, and it is failing with the same error. And we have validated the port is enabled or not. So how we validated the port? We tested using the telnet, right? Telnet, the server name or fully qualified domain name, space, port number. It like this, it gives the, as soon as you enter, it tells whether the port is enabled or not, or port is listening or not, right? We have tested and we see that ports are listening without any issue. Then we verified the SQL error log on primary and we understand the connection is forcefully closed by the secondary server. See here, 5023 is for secondary on the primary, right? Whereas if I go ahead and check that secondary server, it says that the login failure to connect the endpoint. Which login? Since the service is running under the local account, it is using work group, that is your work group server, and server name and dollar account is your local account. It says that this account doesn't have a connect permission, right? Since it is a local computer account, I don't have this account available. So I cannot create this login with this account to grant the connect permission, right? If your service is running under local account, that will be bind to NT authority slash system account, where we will have to provide connect permission to this NT authority slash system account on the endpoint to establish a communication between the database mirroring servers, right? I have just created or granted endpoint connect permission on the endpoint, right? I just use this grant connect on endpoint. So you will have to provide the endpoint name wherever so whatever name you have given to your endpoint, you'll have to provide this to NT authority slash system. This has to be executed as it is on both the servers, whatever endpoint name it is, and grant connection. Once executed, then you can just start the database mirroring from the GUI wherever you configure, right? That's it. So this is how we should troubleshoot database mirroring. Thanks for watching. Maybe I will upload more on so troubleshooting other scenarios or other areas. Like if you have anything specific, please mention on the comment so that I will repro the issue and will provide you the way how to troubleshoot the issue, right? Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.